मित्रों नमस्कार, वेलकम टू यूट्यूब चैनल डॉक्टर पवन जायसवाल। First of all, wish you a very happy and prosperous 2017. Friends, today I am going to discuss with you a very tricky topic of income tax, that is one of the allowance which is received by almost all each and every salaried employee known as house rent allowance, HRA. Mostly the government employees, big corporates and prosperous employers compensates their employees for their living by enhancing their salaries by giving an allowance known as house rent allowance. As you know, if you are not living in your own city, if you are not living in your own house, or if you are not living in the house in which you are not paying rent, obviously you have to pay rent for the house in which you are living yourself or with your family. For execution of your job, you may be transferred from one place to another place, one city to another city, one state to another state, and it is not possible for everyone that he is having a house everywhere. That's why the employers are providing house rent allowance so that your rent burden may be reduced. Salary for your expenses and savings, and house rent allowance for giving rent to the landlord. But under Income Tax Act 1961, there is a specific section 1013A, which signifies that house rent allowance is exempt in the hands of the employees to certain extent. First of all, we'll take the example of those employees who are living in metro cities, means Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata and Chennai. And if you are residing in these four metro, in that case, you have to calculate three amounts. Least of the three amounts shall be treated as exempt out of house rent allowance received by yourself from your employer. The very first consideration under section 1013A is 50% of your salary. Second one is actual HRA received. Third one is excess of rent paid over 10% of the salary. Calculate these three amounts. A, 50% of the salary. B, actual HRA received. C, excess of rent paid over 10% of the salary. Whichever is least is exempt from tax. Remaining amount shall be treated as taxable HRA, hence shall be included in your gross salary. And if you are not living in metros, other than metros, then again under section 1013A, three amounts to be calculated. First one is 40% of the salary. In case of metro, it is 50%. In case of non-metro, it is 40% of the salary. Then second one is actual HRA received. And third one is excess of rent paid over 10% of the salary. Least of these three amount shall be treated as exempted HRA, and rest shall be included in the salary. Sometimes what happens, the employee is receiving house rent allowance and he is paying the rent which is bigger than the amount of HRA. In that case, they feel that the entire HRA is exempt, but go through section 1013A and then claim exemption under section 1013A and then claim exempted HRA from the taxable HRA, from the taxable salary. Two things are very important. House rent allowance received by the judges of Honorable High Court and Supreme Court is fully exempt from tax. Remember, house rent allowance received by the judges of High Court and Supreme Court is fully exempt from tax. Number 2, HRA, if you are not paying rent, HRA, house rent allowance you are receiving, but you are not paying rent due to any reason, in that case, entire HRA shall be fully taxable. One question is that a person is living with his or her spouse in the same house and both are employed, husband and wife both are employed, getting house rent allowance from their respective employers. Here, one of the person, say husband or wife, who is paying rent shall claim deduction, shall claim exemption under section 1013A, and the spouse who is not paying rent shall pay tax on entire house rent allowance. A very important point, as a point to ponder. If you are getting house rent allowance from your employer which is less than 3,000 rupees, so you are supposed to not produce a receipt of rent paid before your employer to get claim of exempted HRA under section 1013A. And if you are receiving house rent which is more than 3,000 rupees, then ask receipt from your employer, because your DDO, that is Joint Disbursing Authority, or your employer or deductor may ask you to produce receipt of the rent paid. Ultimately, it is the income tax department which decides whether you have to produce receipt or not. In case if you are getting HRA less than 3,000 rupees per month, the ITO may ask you or may exempt you to produce receipt of the house rent paid. But if you are getting HRA more than 3,000 rupees, then getting and producing receipt of the same is must. As you know, the deduction limits, TDS limit under section 194I also, if you are paying rent more than 15,000 rupees per month to your employer, must get TAN number, that is tax deducted at collected source at source account number, and deduct tax at the rate of 10% per month on the consideration paid to the landlord. And after making deduction, give the net amount to the landlord. Very important consideration once again, which I remember to disclose over here, is that must ask the PAN number of your landlord, because while claiming the exemption under section 1013A, quoting the PAN number of the landlord is must in case of income tax return itself. Friends, I hope today's video shall make your vision wide about an allowance received by the employees known as house rent allowance. If you love to see my videos, if you love the contents of my videos, and kindly share it with your friends, subscribe it, like it, and if you have any suggestions, any problem, if you have any questions in your mind, please get in touch with us through any electronic media. Thank you so much. Namaskar.